And what I'd like to do is just invite each of the candidates in turn, as I name them, just to say who they are and to tell us a wee bit about their policies and why we should vote for them.
Right, good evening ladies and gentlemen. My name is Douglas Chapman and I'm the SNP candidate for this election. In this election we believe that there's a strong possibility that we're facing a hung parliament. It's something that doesn't come around very often, but nevertheless we see this as a tremendous opportunity for Scotland. We believe that if you can help us return a strong team of SNP members of Parliament into that hung Parliament, then that gives us the leverage, the power to negotiate with the British Government to try and get the best possible deal that we can for Scotland. We all know that the country is in a dire financial situation, and we all know that cuts in some shape or form, and probably very serious shapes and forms, are coming our way. How do we protect Scotland from that position? How do we strengthen our position to make sure that when the cuts do come, then we have a strong voice at Westminster to protect Scotland from the cuts?
Just hesitation is an ideal spot.
I was going to say that one of the key things we want to do is to overcome some of the cuts that we know are coming, is to grow our economy.
Okay, thank you there. Thank you, Douglas, for that. John, would you like to take the next stage?
Yep. Well, my name is John Maitland. I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate for Kirkcaldy and Tyne-Beath. And I'm looking about the room and I'm seeing a few faces I know for various reasons. I grew up in Kirkcaldy. I moved away in 1990 because there isn't a university here yet, and returned to Kirkcaldy 3 years ago. A lot of people know, mainly thanks to Nick Clegg and Vince Cable and all these people there, what Lib Dems are actually about, so I thought I'd tell you a wee bit more about myself. I went to Capsar Primary School, then Kirkcaldy High School. I've been Dundee University first of all. The last 7 years I've been working in housing for the City of Edinburgh Council. I'm a housing officer there, currently dealing with antisocial behaviour. Now you're thinking that Parliament might be a good place for somebody you can stop people checking each other to go. That might be one of my aims, certainly. But I know the town because this is where I'm from. This is where I again live, and I know a lot about the problems here because I see them every day. And that's why I'm trying to stand here, and I've got time left. I'm giving time for everybody else. We've got a friend down here who's telling us when our time is nearly up.
That's a good introduction. Let's move on. Okay. Lindsay, let's hear what you've got to say.
Well, good evening everyone. My name's Lindsay Patterson. I'm your Conservative and Unionist candidate here in Kirkcaldy and Tyne-Beath. First of all, can I say how pleased I am to see so many of you here this evening, because I think one of the things that's important about this election is trying to get people connected again with politics and people who want to be politicians, because there has been so much kind of ill feeling towards politicians in the past few months. Now, what I'd really like to focus on is how this election really is the most exciting one we've had in a while. It's the first election since devolution when a change of government at Westminster is within touching distance. This is a British general election about UK issues like debt, jobs, welfare, energy, defence, and our relationship with the wider world. It's an election where people in this constituency and in Scotland can realistically expect change if they vote for it.
Okay, Lindsay, thank you very much for that. Moving on, and we're going to move quite swiftly straight to Mark and ask him to introduce himself and some policy.
My name's Mark Hoods. I'm here representing the Labour Party and I'm standing in for our candidate tonight. He couldn't be with us, Gordon Brown.
Shame, shame.
For clearly obvious reasons. Gordon's got a lot of work on at the moment as being a leader of the party. We're very proud to have a local. We're very proud to have a local man who's standing up for our town that is working on a national stage. So I think it's really important that that we go ahead. I would like to just mention a few things about what Labour's priorities are for the next few years if we were to get in government. I think key to us is jobs. Everybody in this community knows that jobs and securing employment for working in areas like this. We spent far too long in the 80s and the 90s suffering the scourge of unemployment in these communities. We want to make sure that that's locked in. We've obviously got economic issues that we need to deal with that as a result of global recession.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Peter, would you like to take the next speech? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Peter Adams, and I'm the UK Independence Party candidate for this election. We basically are working on three themes. First of all is to say no to the mass immigration that's been caused by the open borders of the European Union and the problems that is causing to our society and to the various infrastructures, whether it's the hospitals or the schools.
Rubbish.
We also are working on yes to democracy, bringing it back to the people. We believe in a referendums policy similar to Switzerland, so you, the public, can actually be involved in the decisions and not have, as we often get, people turning up between now and the 6th of May, promising you the earth and then going away and not seeing them again for the next 5 years. That way you are involved in the decisions. And the other thing we're saying no to is paying £45 million per day to the European Union. Money better spent here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Susan.
I'm not going to stand for benefit reasons, but first of all I'd like to thank you for inviting me here tonight. I'm standing as an independent candidate, and I'm standing on a disability rights platform. I'm very proud to stand on a disability rights and equality platform because there are so many people in this society. It's time for the independent people into the Parliament to hold the MPs accountable.
Okay, thank you. And Derek.
Good evening. My name's Derek Jackson, and I'm a landless peasant. In fact, you're all landless peasants as well, unless you're one of the 6,000 people that own 70% of our nation. That's half of 1% of the population own this nation. We are their livestock, almost their pets. We are their economic units. Slaves, in fact. The definition of slavery being a system of forced labour. It's the view of landless peasants, who I represent, that unless we have the right to access to land, to look after ourselves, provide for ourselves, and sustain our own lives, then we are slaves. No more and no less. Unlike the rest of the people here this evening, I'm not campaigning to tell you that our party can look after you and your lives. I'm campaigning for the right for all of you to look after yourselves, to have as small a government as possible, and to be self-reliant as far as is practical.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. And Donald.
Thanks to Ros and to the pastor for getting us together, and thank you for turning out in such numbers. I asked Ros if she had any idea how many there'd be, and it's a great full house. I come from Balquhidder, Donald McLaren. I don't represent a party. I'm not sure if I represent the bad percentage of landowners. Let me be straight, I have 30 acres. I don't know if that makes me on the right side or the wrong side of the line. Why am I standing as an independent? I'm pretty disappointed with what's happened over the last 13 years, or the state that we're left in. I think Gordon Brown has an enormous amount to answer for, bringing Britain to what I think is a historic low point. I'm also disappointed with the parties. I think they've had many opportunities to spell out exactly what's gone wrong over the last 30 years. I think they've been weak and muddled, and the parties they're offering us are, the policies they're offering us are not much of a clue to the future. Briefly, I think we can turn the economy around, we can turn the country around, we don't need to be depressed. The way to do it, who makes the money in this country? businesses.
Thank you.
Invest in them, and we will have the money to pay for our public services.
Thank you very much. And so there you have. I'm now going to take some questions. The question what's going to win? What's the key reason that people should are going to win this election with?
Trying to stick to the question which was saying without difference to any other party, which Margaret just failed to do. I think the key thing that will change this election, the result in this election, is you yourselves, the people of this constituency, the people of Scotland. I know that the people of this constituency are either very angry, they're very angry about the expenses scandal, they're very angry about things like the bankers' bonuses, and they're very concerned at the same time. They're concerned about their jobs, they're concerned about their families, and they're concerned about the future of the country.
Concerned about the youth vote council, Mr. Chairman?
We will be.
What happened to that?
What I'd like to say is that the waste that has been...
I think
the other
10 seconds left.
The other big thing that I really should say initially was that to avoid the cuts that you're talking about, then what we need to do is build or rebuild our economy in Fife. In this constituency, of the 10 worst unemployment black spots in Fife, 7 are in this constituency.
Okay, thank you. Kerry. Nice to Kerry.
In large part, this election is being fought for you to choose which of the main parties will write the very large cheques to the people we owe the money to. Who do we owe the money to? Does anybody know who we owe the money to? That huge debt, that debt so large your children and probably your children's children will be in hock to a bunch of bankers who were so rubbish at business they couldn't bank properly. That's what this election is being fought for. We're going to choose who's going to sign those big cheques, who's going to adjust our poverty, who's going to cut our services. Because now, there's no choice. We've got to pay those people. We owe them the money. We blew it. And now all we've got left is the bill. And you people are going to decide who pays it.
Directly at Mark, Labour. I've been Labour all my life, but now I'm a pensioner. How is it the Labour is saying they're looking after the pensioners when they put a 10% tax to 20%? Also, this year alone, the people that's worked in the National Health Service all their life, their pensions are frozen. No rise this year at all. So my income's been cut by 10% plus no rise at all for not pension.
Okay, yeah.
100 years of the Labour Party, representing the poor mass of this country, the 90% of people, the 10% wealthy get their money from. What did you get? A longer tea break. Paid holidays. Your children don't go down the pit anymore, but you're still slaves. 100 years of Labour, 100 years of the unelected House of Lords. They're traitors.
Just to pick on your pick up on the question that you had, there's been really tough decisions, and Gordon makes his decisions and the governments make their decisions based on the information that they have and what they do. I think one of the good things, one of the things I'm kind of proud about with regards to Labour is the fact that they will always go back and they will admit if they've made a mistake. They go back. So at the end of the day, where we're at the moment is look at the things that we have done for pensioners. Look at the winter heating allowance. Look at the increase in the pensions that have been going through. Look at, there's been lots of work.
I would like to ask each one of the 8 candidates if any of them can give me a good reason why we are at the moment fighting a war in Afghanistan and trying to end Afghanistan. Why are we doing this?
Okay, I tell you what. Can I come back to that, sir, just in one moment? I just want to make sure, we're on the pensions, can we just make sure that you, sir, behind you, we're happy with that question? Or do you want to come back?
I'd like also to comment on
that. Right,
that.
okay, let's stay on the pensions and then we'll go to the war question, alright?
One of the things, as I've mentioned a couple of times already, is the waste of money that we are pouring out to Brussels. part of that...
Got the rest of the answer. Concern, pride. We should be really questioning Labour's fitness to continue running our money and our future.
Here, here.
Let's move on. Let's pick up the question that was voiced by the gentleman. If you would just like to go through each one of you, let's keep it to 30 seconds again. The question about the debate about the war, and again, we'll go straight to the end. Peter, I see no name, so let's pick that up, please.
The reason we went in the first place is because the United States claimed that because the attack on them in New York was an attack on them as a country, therefore they called on their NATO allies to go and help them. They decided that it was Afghanistan where it started from. If you actually trace where the original bombers came from, most of them came from Saudi. So why didn't they go and attack Saudi? Because it's a lot of oil there.
Okay,
we shouldn't be in Afghanistan. We've proven that in the past. We were thrown out 100 odd years ago. We shouldn't be there now.
Okay, Linda, do you want to talk on that?
Well, certainly I would say my party supports the mission that we have in Afghanistan. And one of the reasons why is that we are focused on getting the job there done, and we want to help train up the Afghan security forces to be able to look after their own security interests now, so we can move out of Afghanistan. And our priority now has to make sure our troops are properly equipped and can get the job done as safely as is possible and have full government support behind them.
Okay, thank you. Douglas?
Yeah, sure. I think the question was, is there any good reason to be in Afghanistan? The simple and very direct answer to that is no. There is no good reason why we should be in Afghanistan. For a nation of the standing of the United Kingdom to go into a war zone without any real plan about what we do when we get there and how we get back out if we make a complete mess of it. History tells us that it's a very difficult area to deal with, the whole area around Afghanistan, and why we're there, I don't know. But obviously, Gordon Brown has taken the decision. He's took the decision to go into Iraq against the best, or the wishes of the British people, I believe, into an illegal war there, and he's continued with his adventure in Afghanistan.
Thank you. I need to be fair, I need to give everybody an opportunity, and then we'll go to the question at the back. John?
Well, I don't think we should blame Gordon Brown for going into Iraq. I think that was more Blair. So credit where credit's due, if that's correct. I was against going to Iraq. That doesn't mean I hold the mind in that respect, but Ming Campbell, Charles Kennedy, all the other Lib Dems very much against going to war in Iraq as well, and I think most would argue being subsequently proved right. I don't think we should personally actually be in Afghanistan. However, we've been there 9 years and there are people serving out there now at the moment. What I think the problem with Afghanistan is we can't snap our fingers and make it all better, nor can we snap our fingers and take the guys and girls out of there again. What we need to do is refocus as to what we're actually trying to achieve there, and then we'll know if we're nearly finished yet, or what further needs to be done in that respect.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Susan, thoughts on Afghanistan?
As an anti-war campaigner, sorry, but I have slept in the streets of Downing Street with those gentle and military families against the war. I'm totally disgusted that not one person has raised the issue of the war or the veterans and the civilians that have been killed through the years of the war and what's happened there.
Donald?
Lots of reasons are given for us going into Afghanistan, or before that Iraq. And if in Afghanistan, if it was just to, for example, give girls and women a fair education, which is a good thing in itself, I don't think we would commit ourselves to war just for that. Serving in a number of embassies around the world, we've always got the dilemma. If there is a problem that affects us in Britain, do we fight it overseas, do we fight it on the front line, or do we wait for it to wash up on our own shores? Whether it's cigarette smuggling, or terrorism, or prostitution, organised crime from abroad, a very difficult dilemma. I think Afghanistan has brought this out. I personally can see the strength of the argument of trying to fight Al-Qaeda as far on the front line as possible, rather than waiting for them to deal with us. One final point, my son has served in Iraq and twice in Afghanistan as a commando. I've asked him the same question. He says, I'm prepared to do it. We are making an impact there. And I've added to that, and he agrees with it. If we pull out, what does that say for the people who've already given their lives for it? What would they be thinking?
Orwell would love this, wouldn't he? None of us can remember why we're in Afghanistan. We were told they wouldn't give us Osama bin Laden. That's what we were told. They had Osama bin Laden, they wouldn't give him to us, so we invaded their country and killed tens of thousands of innocent people. Now we're told the only place on earth you can imagine being a terrorist is the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. It's the only place on earth you can imagine making bombs. It's absurd. The biggest business on earth is the arms trade. You think they go to work in the morning thinking about how to break out peace? Or do you think they go to work in the morning thinking about how to sell more weapons? I think it's the latter.
And so I'll say it again, do you think that equality laws are sidelining Christians in public life? And Chris, I'll ask you to answer that first one.
Yeah, we've got a very firm policy on this, that you know, if your belief is either Christian or Muslim or you know, whatever, then you should be able to follow that without fear or favour. There should not be any real detriment to you as an individual to religiously. Then you know, you should be allowed as a citizen of the country actually to follow that. And you know, I don't quite understand in terms of the equality aspects, but you know, I think that as far as equality is concerned, then everybody should just be able to follow what their own belief is.
Okay, John?
I think I nearly answered this before when I was talking about us all being told. I don't think any group should be curtailed in any way regarding how they want to operate, as long as they're not doing harm to other men, women and children in that respect. They're as simple as that, whether it be on religion or any other basis there. I know that the Tories have had a little local difficulty in Ayrshire today, where one of their candidates has been suspended and they won't actually be a Tory because of the comments he made about homosexuality. I don't think that's a good thing, and in Blair's new Tory party, that's probably a bad thing.
I like the talk of the new Liberals, since they were in the old coalition that were in power for 8 years in Scotland, so they're hardly a new party here. But certainly talking about Christianity and its place in politics and in the country now, I think that whatever our faith, Christianity has made a great contribution to shaping the nature of our country and its humanity and its essential decency. And I think that it's important to recognise that. And certainly if I was elected, it's something that I would try to uphold. And people should have the freedom to worship as they please.
Part of the thing goes back to the whole political correctness. It's a complete nonsense. Part of the political correctness is the fact that it wants to break down society. It wants to break down the family. It wants to break down the belief in various religious groups. That is why Christianity is being sidelined in some areas. That is why this destruction of what this is, Britain. It was a Christian country, and in many cases it still is a Christian country, but it's been sidelined by the politically correct brigade, and we're allowing it to happen.
Okay. Susan?
A fair question, because there's been a lot of questions been asked. I've been involved in maybe the last 9 months, the making of the Air Quality Bill, and so there was a huge load of debates for different faiths. The view was taken with basically the rights equality for everybody, so to speak. So that's why things are how they are.
Okay, and Derek?
What you believe is, of course, your business, and every effort should be made to protect your right to believe whatever you like. However, a government that believes in one God is much more dangerous than a government that believes in your right to believe in God. And for that reason, we're opposed to anything which restricts or enhances one person's right to believe or affects their right to believe in any way at all.
Okay,
I'm coming from 5 Egyptian Association, and I am working and living in 5 here. However, I have a big family in Egypt. And I don't know if the candidates are aware of what happens in Egypt between people of a particular faith and others. The equality we enjoy here is not what happens there. And I'm sure all of you would have heard, I don't know if the British media, of course, did not cover that, about Christians coming from a Christmas service and being shot on the door of the church. I don't know if you're aware of this. And on the other hand, here in Britain, we give rights to everybody. However, in Egypt, my family don't enjoy this right. I don't know what can you do to help us to make this, if anything happens in the world to a particular faith, especially Islam, it's all over the media. But for Christians and where they are an ethnic minority group in their own country, they are treated very badly, and that is not mentioned at all in the media. I'm just wondering, what can you propose to help us as a Five Egyptian Association, or the Egyptian Association here, because in Scotland, the biggest majority of Egyptians who are Copts living here in Kirkcaldy, or come here to worship in Kirkcaldy. What can you do to help us to be aware of this, and also what can you do to help, because we come from the Middle East, we know and we can see that political Islam is growing here in Kirkcaldy. We don't have to go to Afghanistan to fight terrorism. No. Terrorism is growing here in the streets of Glenrothes, Cowdenbeath, Kirkcaldy, Methil. We can see it and we know it that it's growing here. What can you do to help us to feel safe?
Thank you very much. I'm going to hand that over to Donald.
I just want to clarify, is it what we do with a country like Egypt and what's going on in Egypt?
Yes.
The three tools. Invasion. Not such a good idea. Probably counterproductive. Secondly, making it very clear to another culture what we stand for, and if we've got criticism of another country or another country, at least make them understand this is where we stand. And three, example. And it's up to people whether they follow other people's example or not. But going back slightly to the other question, if we are setting an example where we are trying to tie down every nut and bolt of people's personal behaviour and drown ourselves in strictures and make the law interfere with every aspect of our life, we've all got cultural differences, we've all got different opinions. I think there's got to be a limit to the law sometimes and how much it should intrude. That's what I mean by example. That is, if we can show to the world that we are still enlightened, we can show it to ourselves here, but we can also have influence around the world gradually.
Okay, I'm going to take Derek and then we're going to have John after that.
I agree with Donald. We need to set an example. And so I propose we remove the unelected bishops from the unelected House of Lords and then say to other governments around the world, you shouldn't have religion in your government. It's wrong. Government should represent the needs of the people and not adhere itself to one particular religious belief. And I believe the American flag
John?
I feel a bit like somebody on a TV debate on a Thursday night. I'm going to say I agree with part of what you're saying about the bishops there and that respect. Yes, Britain can shine a light as an example for the rest of the world, but we have to be realistic and not pretend that we live in some sunny lit highland in which all is perfect. We live in a country where BAE were going to be nailed for bribing Arab countries regarding arms deals, but that was shuffled aside there. Yeah. We live in a country where we've got an unelected House of Lords. We live in a country where the government was chosen last time with fewer people voting for it than didn't vote at all. If we're going to say, live like us, we need to get something sorted out, like fairness, like access to education, like all these things that need change.
Okay.
Talking about morals, the best guidelines are the Ten Commandments. If you follow all of them, then you keep your morals up and you've got good lines.
So the first 5 of them are about only believing in the one God promoted by
right,
the
okay,
Bible.
right.
So I'm not sure about that.
Let's deal with that on its own. Are you in favour of making it easier to have an early term abortion? Okay.
I'd like to reverse the question. Is there anybody here in favour of forcing somebody not to?
At the end of the day, it's down to the personal choice of the individual that's concerned. I think it's not right that we have a society where we say, oh, we shouldn't hang somebody for horrendous crimes because it's taking away a life. yet at the same time they are destroying an unborn life. That seems to be a complete contradiction. However, at the end of the day, it is the individual who is actually carrying that child who A, has to make the decision, and B, has to live with that decision once they've made it.
I feel it's very important that our national government should show integrity in dealing with international problems and not just have the sort of local council effect in dealing with domestic things purely. In the event of being elected, what foreign policy proposals would each candidate put before Parliament to discourage China from providing weapons and finance to the Burmese military rulers who currently use these to suppress democracy and massacre their opponents? And what efforts would it make to engage in meaningful dialogue with the generals in Myanmar?
1 billion economic slaves under a tyranny Hitler could never have dreamed of. A vast amount of resources and an iron fist in dealing with its population. And we buy all of our stuff from them. Your mobile phones, your televisions, soon your cars. In fact, the more stuff that comes from China, the better for our economy. We'll all be better off when the stuff from China's cheaper and their labour force are working with less rights than we ever had.
Thank you. And also locally. And I'll tell you what, can we try and make our answers as concise as possible so that we get through? We'll cut this to 30 seconds if that's all right.
Okay, I don't know why you should trust me or anybody else by taking their word for it. You should find out for yourselves what's going on. You should find out how these people vote, what they want, and who they're really working for in the register of members' interests. Don't take my word for it. Almost all of them are in hock to some business. And they're only interested in you when it's time to vote.
Okay. Thank you. Susan.
We've seen in Edinburgh, we've got more or less a balanced parliament there. We've got a government with a majority of 1. We made 94 manifesto commitments in 2007 and we've delivered on 62 of them. I think some of the parties who are represented here tonight say, well, if you have a balanced parliament, a hung parliament, it's a sign of weakness. I don't think it is. It's an opportunity for parties to work together on the things they agree on. Too much happens in politics where it's yaboo and people want to talk about the things they disagree on. Let's take the country forward and agree on the things and get things delivered for the people who sit here tonight.
There's no difference between a hung parliament and a balanced parliament, and I can't imagine a better state of affairs than the Houses of Parliament representing the entire country and running it on behalf of the entire country instead of their political party. Only 2% of people in this country belong to a political party. Those are the people who run your lives. They don't represent you when they get into power. They represent their political parties, not us.
1 minute. Why should we vote for you?
Should vote for the UK Independence Party because we are actually the only party who are standing up for the rights of the British people. The old failed parties have happily conceded to the European project, the European Union. You see it, they've signed away many of our rights, and in fact, talking about having a referendum this time around, if I remember rightly, there was a referendum promised on the last Labour manifesto, and that didn't happen. But having said that, the Conservative Party and the Lib Dems also said they'd have a referendum on that as well, and they failed to do that. We stand up for the British people, and we think that it's better to look after it than the old failed parties who have failed you miserably.
Okay. Thank you. Donald.
Thank you very much for listening. Perhaps we were expecting a little more wisdom than you got, but it was a hell of a good discussion. The last question points out so clearly the muddle we're in. If you look at what the parties are saying, they are fiddling. Are we going to have a little bit of cuts here, or are we going to have 6 billion cuts there? Are we going to have just a little bit of higher tax here, or a big higher tax there? Osborne and Darling scrapping over 1% national insurance. Irrelevant stuff. Cuts and taxes, the menu we're being offered by the parties, is a disastrous way to look ahead for the next 5 years. We've had 13 years of irresponsible borrowing and spending. There is some responsible borrowing still to be done. That is to give us our businessmen, who are the muscle for the country, the opportunity to employ, expand and export. It's going to lead to a temporary increase in the deficit. Britain will come out so much stronger in 4 years' time. The others have no vision. Look at that vision, because it's a way for Britain to build itself and go forward.
Thank you, Derek.
Any mathematicians or economists in the audience tonight like to tell me what 3% growth in the economy is in 100 years? It's an astronomical number, beyond belief. It means a doubling of our consumption of the Earth's resources every 20 years. I wish Gordon were here so I could ask him to do the figures for me. A doubling of our consumption every 20 years. Don't vote for me if you don't like the idea of looking after yourself and stopping an economy which relies exploiting other people in places so far away we don't even know the names of their countries. Don't vote for me if you don't want to look after yourself and be provided with the means to do that. Fundamentally, land. Land's what we live on, not Tesco, not the economy, and not, as Adam Smith, a son of Kirkcaldy, once said, the invisible hand of enlightened self-interest. I think Mr. Gecko from the film Wall Street said it best. Greed is good. That's what our economy is based on. The greed of a few people to make profit from the many. Vote for me if you want to look after yourself on the one thing that will enable you to do that. Land. Vote Landless Peasant. Vote for Derek Jackson.
Well, first of all, I would like to suggest you consider voting for me. One of the advantages of living in the constituency is that I can stay until I'm talking to you all, if you want to talk to me, that is, so I can go very far to go home. As well as being from the area, having grown up here, knowing how things actually are in town, because I live and see them every day. I've been around a bit in politics over the years, and I've also been around a bit in life. I deal with people in horrendous positions. I understand the impact of Labour government and Tory government has had on the poorest and most vulnerable people in society there. I've already said I wouldn't be having another income if I were elected. I'd also like to say I would regret that I've missed an awful lot more Rovers games, so I'm sure Mr. Torrance at the back may be able to keep me updated. But the other thing is, I can cast blindly and commit to one thing. If I pay off my mortgage, I won't not notice and keep claiming for it.
Thanks very much. I see this election as a great opportunity for Scotland and a great opportunity for Kirkcaldy. We've got a chance really to rebuild our economy and protect Scotland from the cuts that we know are going to be worse than those imposed by Margaret Thatcher. And that's been said by the other political parties. We want to remove Trident from our shores. We want to create jobs in this constituency that has been so badly let down in the past. I think it's time for a new MP here. And I think that you should be looking for an MP who will feel proud of the area that he or she represents, but also an MP that you can feel proud that they represent you in Parliament. So I hope you'll vote for me at this election.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you to vote for Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown served his community since 27 years. Gordon Brown stood beside miners in the early 80s, fighting for jobs. Now, we had a period over the last few years whereby we've seen virtually, we've seen the number of jobs that were required in this country, in this constituency, drop very, very low. So what we're saying is we need to get back to that position. Jobs is going to be at the forefront. We need to protect the economic growth. We need a man who's got that experience and that tenacity. What we've seen in last year, they were predicting that we were going to hit 3 million unemployed. We've managed to see only 2.4 million unemployed. That is the right result of the actions that Gordon Brown has been taking.
2.4 million. 2.4 million. How are you not happy?
Well, I'd like to say thank you very much for all coming to join us here tonight and listening to our political ramblings. Because one of the most important things is that people get involved in politics again, in the kind of political system, and feel that they can have some kind of control and make an impact in what happens in politics, because it affects everyone's everyday lives. I'd like to say, in terms of voting for the Conservatives, in the Scottish Parliament we've made an impact there. We can do great things at Westminster. At the Scottish Parliament we've done things like force the Scottish Government to cut local rates for businesses, be more transparent, spending taxpayers' money, putting 1,000 more police on the beat in Scotland. We've done some really positive things, and with your support we can do even more.
Thank you. And finally, Susan.
I would actually like you to make up your own mind and stop voting the way you normally vote with parties, because it doesn't matter what party you vote for. At the end of the day, they're going to do what you actually need in Kirkcaldy. If you're going to vote for it to make a difference. Look at our workers that are topping up the unions, filling up the party's pockets, yet they're being crapped on at the highest level. Seriously, sorry. Look at the nurses, look at the country strapped. We need quality services, frontline services supported and delivered with dignity and respect. We're not getting it. Seriously, we're not getting it.
Mark, can you just wait until we've all finished? I'm sorry.
Vote for it to make a difference.
Sorry, wait a minute. Susan.
If you vote and you seriously want a difference and want some kind of support your local community, then vote for independence.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen,
independence, no independence.
Ladies and gentlemen, there we are. And so there we are, our first Hustings meeting.